Jared sat behind the thick glass window of his small subway booth, rubbing his tired eyes. It was nearly midnight, and the station was almost empty. The last train had just left, and only a few stragglers wandered toward the exits. Jared had worked the night shift for years, and he was used to the quiet. Outside the booth, the cold, tiled floor of the station reflected the flickering lights above. A distant echo of a dripping pipe filled the silence. Just as he reached for his coffee, a sound caught his attention. Soft, almost like a rustling whisper. He frowned and turned his head toward the women's restroom. The noise came again. It wasn't the usual creak of old pipes or the hum of the vending machine. It was different. Careful now. Jared stepped out of his booth. His footsteps echoed as he walked toward the restroom. He hesitated for a moment, then knocked lightly on the door. "Hello? Is anyone in there?" he called. No answer. Jared glanced around the empty station before pushing the door open slowly. The fluorescent lights buzzed above, casting a dull glow over the room. At first, everything seemed normal. A row of sinks lined the wall, mirrors reflecting his tired face. The stalls were closed, but then he noticed something strange. A pair of small, dirty sneakers peeking out from under the last stall. His heartbeat quickened. "Hey, is everything okay?" he asked gently. Still, no response. Taking a deep breath, Jared stepped closer and knocked on the stall door. This time, he heard something, a shaky breath, almost like a quiet sob. His heart tightened. Someone was definitely inside. "It's okay," he said softly. "I work here. I just want to make sure you're safe." A long pause. Then, very slowly, the stall door creaked open. Jared's breath caught in his throat. A young girl, no older than 8 or 9, stood before him, her arms wrapped tightly around something. Her face was pale, her dark eyes wide with fear. Her clothes were dirty, and her hair was tangled. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days. But it wasn't just her appearance that shocked Jared. It was what she was holding. A tiny baby, wrapped in an old, thin jacket, nestled against her chest. Jared's hands trembled as he stared. The baby barely moved. For a second, fear gripped him. Was the baby even alive? The girl clutched the infant tighter, her small body shaking. "Please," she whispered, "don't take him away." Jared swallowed hard, forcing himself to stay calm. He had no idea who this girl was, where she had come from, or why she was hiding in a subway bathroom. But one thing was clear: she was terrified. And whatever had driven her here must have been worse than anything he could imagine. Jared stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing. The girl's frightened eyes stared up at him, as if she was waiting for him to do something. Anything. The baby in her arms was small, too small. Jared couldn't see the infant's face, but it was clear that something wasn't right. The girl's clothes were torn and dirty, as if she'd been running or hiding for days. Her hair was matted, her face streaked with dirt. But there was something about her, something fragile. It made Jared's heart ache. "Hey," Jared said gently, trying not to startle her. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to help." The girl didn't respond right away. Instead, she tightened her grip on the baby. The faint sound of her breath caught in her chest. She looked down at the tiny bundle in her arms, her face filled with worry. Are you okay?" Jared asked, taking a cautious step closer. The girl's eyes flicked to him, and for a second, Jared thought she might run. But instead, she stepped back into the corner of the stall, hugging the baby tightly to her chest. Jared's heart sank. He wasn't sure what he expected, but he hadn't imagined this kind of fear in a child. There was something deeply unsettling about the way she was looking at him, as if she was waiting for him to betray her. "Please," the girl said in a whisper, "please don't take him away. He's all I have." Jared felt a lump form in his throat. He knelt down to her level, keeping his voice soft and calm. "I won't take him from you. I just want to help. What's your name?" For a long moment, the girl didn't answer. She just stared at him, her lips trembling. Then, after what felt like forever, she whispered, "Mia." "Mia," Jared repeated softly, nodding. "That's a beautiful name. Mia, I need to know if you and your brother are okay. You've been in here a long time." The girl hesitated. She looked down at the baby, her fingers brushing gently over his tiny body. "He's not feeling well. He's cold. I didn't know where else to go." Jared's stomach twisted. He could see the concern in her eyes, the desperation. The baby didn't look good. His skin was pale, his tiny body shivering despite the warmth of the bathroom. Jared's mind raced. He knew he had to act fast. "Mia," Jared said softly, "I'm going to get some help. You're not alone anymore, okay? You and your brother are safe." The girl's eyes widened, her body tense. "No," she cried. "No one can take him. They'll separate us. I won't let them." Jared's heart broke as he saw the fear in her eyes. It wasn't just about the baby. It was about her, about the life she had been living before this moment. She wasn't just scared of him or the hospital. She was scared of losing the one person she cared about most in the world. "Listen to me, Mia," Jared said, his voice firm but gentle. "No one is going to take him away from you, but he needs help. If we don't get him checked out, he might not make it." Mia's face twisted with uncertainty. But after a long pause, she slowly nodded, her hands shaking as she loosened her grip on the baby, just enough for Jared to take a step closer. "I promise you," he said quietly, "I won't let anything happen to him." Mia seemed to believe him, just for a moment. Jared moved slowly, trying to be as gentle as possible. He knew he couldn't rush this. Mia was already scared, and the last thing he wanted was to make things worse. He took a deep breath, looking at the baby in her arms. The small bundle still hadn't moved much, and Jared could see the signs that the infant was struggling. The baby's face was pale, and its tiny chest barely rose with each breath. Mia kept her arms wrapped tightly around the baby, but her eyes followed every movement Jared made. She seemed like she was preparing for something terrible to happen, but Jared didn't want that. He wanted to keep them both safe. "Mia," Jared said softly, "I'm going to call for some help, all right? I think your brother really needs to see a doctor." The moment the words left his mouth, Mia's body went rigid. She looked up at him with wide, panicked eyes. "No," she whispered fiercely. "Don't call anyone. Please." Jared's heart dropped. The fear in her voice was clear. She was terrified, and whatever reason she had for not trusting people was serious. "Mia, I understand you're scared," Jared said gently, his voice barely above a whisper. "But the baby, he needs help. We have to get him checked out. It's for his own good." Mia shook her head quickly, her eyes starting to tear up. She clutched the baby even closer, her fingers digging into the fabric of his jacket. "I don't want them to take him away," she whispered. "They'll put him somewhere else, and I won't see him again." Jared froze. His heart ached at the words that came from such a small child. She wasn't just worried about the baby's health. She was terrified of losing him. And Jared knew that kind of fear came from something much deeper than just a hospital visit. "Mia, no one wants to take him from you," Jared said, trying to reassure her. "I won't let anyone do that. But he's so weak, and I'm not sure how much longer he can wait." The girl's shoulders trembled, and she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not supposed to be here. I ran away." Jared's stomach twisted. "You ran away? From where?" Mia hesitated, her eyes dropping to the baby in her arms. Then she slowly whispered, "From home. From my mom. She had him." And then her voice broke, and she wiped her eyes quickly. She fell. She couldn't wake up. "I was too scared to stay. I took my brother, and I left. I didn't know what else to do." Jared's breath caught in his throat. He had suspected something was wrong, But he hadn't imagined this. The girl wasn't just hiding to avoid getting in trouble. She was trying to protect her brother. And she had been alone, without help, for who knew how long. "Mia," Jared said softly, "you did the right thing by taking care of your brother. You're a brave girl, but now we need to get you both the help you need. I'll make sure no one separates you, I promise." Mia's eyes searched his face, as if looking for the truth in his words. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she nodded, her small hands still gripping the baby tightly. "I'll stay with him," Maya said quietly. I don't want to lose him." Jared felt a heavy weight in his chest. He knew he had to keep his promise, no matter what. Jared took a deep breath and looked at Mia, her face filled with both fear and exhaustion. He knew this wasn't going to be easy, but he also knew he couldn't wait any longer. The baby needed help, and Mia was too young to carry the burden of this alone. "Listen," Jared said gently, kneeling down to her level. "I'm going to call for an ambulance. They'll help your brother. I won't let them take him from you, I promise. But we need to get him to a hospital. He's not okay." Mia's eyes grew wide with fear. She pressed the baby tighter to her chest, almost as if she could protect him from the world with just her small arms. She shook her head frantically. No, please don't call anyone," she cried. Her voice trembled with panic. "They'll take him away. They'll put him in foster care. I won't be able to see him again." Jared's heart broke for the little girl. He could hear the desperation in her voice, and he understood that her fear ran deep. She wasn't just worried about a hospital visit. She was afraid of losing the only family she had left. "Mia," Jared said softly, "I can't promise you that everything will stay exactly the way it is, but I can promise you that your brother needs help right now. He's so small, and he's very weak." Mia's face crumpled with emotion. "But I promised him I wouldn't leave him. I promised I'd protect him." Jared felt a lump in his throat. He could see how much Mia loved her little brother, how fiercely she wanted to keep him safe. But in her young mind, her only way of protecting him was to hide from the world. And now, that was making things worse. "Mia," Jared said, trying to stay calm, "you are protecting him. You're keeping him safe by making sure he gets the help he needs. I promise, no one is going to take him away from you. I'll make sure of it." For a long moment, Mia didn't say anything. She just stood there, her hands trembling as she held the baby close. Jared could see the conflict in her eyes. She was torn between fear and the instinct to do what was best for her brother. "I'm scared," she whispered. Jared nodded, understanding completely. "I know, Mia. I'm scared too. But sometimes, doing the right thing means we have to be brave, even when we're afraid." Mia looked down at her brother, her eyes softening. The baby's tiny chest rose and fell slowly, but he was so still, so fragile. Mia's face softened with love, and she gently brushed a strand of hair away from his face. "I don't want to lose him," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Jared placed a hand on her shoulder, offering what comfort he could. "You won't lose him. You've already done the hardest part by keeping him safe. Now we just need to make sure he's okay. You're not alone in this, Mia." After what seemed like an eternity, Maya slowly nodded. Her hands, still shaking, loosened their grip on the baby just enough for Jared to take a step closer. "I'll stay with him," she said softly. I don't want to be alone again." Jared smiled gently, reassuring her. "You won't be alone, Mia. I'm here with you. And you've got people who are going to help you and your brother. You don't have to do this on your own anymore." Mia looked up at him with a small, hopeful smile, and Jared knew that he had done the right thing. They had taken the first step, and no matter what came next, they would face it together. Jared didn't waste any time. He quickly pulled out his phone, dialing 911 with shaky hands. He could still see Mia standing in the corner of the bathroom, her arms wrapped around her baby brother, her face filled with worry. It hurt to see her so scared, But he knew he had no choice. The baby's breathing was slow and shallow, and he couldn't afford to wait any longer. The phone rang twice before someone picked up. 911, what's your emergency? A calm voice asked. My name is Jared. I'm at the subway station on 5th Street. There's a young girl here, and she's with her baby brother. He's not well. He's very cold, and I think he's been neglected. He's only a few months old, maybe less. Jared's voice trembled as he spoke, but he tried to stay as calm as possible. We'll send an ambulance right away. Stay with the girl and the baby. Help is on the way. Are you in the restroom? The operator asked. Yes. We're in the women's restroom. Please hurry. The baby's barely moving. The operator didn't waste any time. Stay on the line with me, sir. I need you to make sure the baby is as warm as possible. Can you find something to wrap him in? Jared looked around frantically. The bathroom was small, and there was nothing to use but paper towels. He grabbed a few handfuls, trying to make a makeshift blanket. He knelt down beside Mia, who was still holding the baby tightly. Her hand shook, but she didn't let go. I called for help, Jared said softly, his voice reassuring. They're on their way, Mia. Help is coming. You did the right thing. Mia nodded slowly, but her eyes were full of fear. What if they take him away? What if they don't let me stay with him? She asked, her voice breaking. Jared reached out, gently touching her arm. I promise you, Mia, no one is going to take him away from you. We're going to make sure you both get the help you need. You're doing everything right. Mia didn't say anything. She just held the baby even tighter, her face pressed against his small head. Jared could see the fear in her eyes, the overwhelming responsibility that had been placed on her small shoulders. It wasn't fair. She was just a child, yet she had been forced to take care of a baby in a world that seemed so big and so dangerous. As Jared waited for the ambulance to arrive, he kept glancing at the door, hoping to hear the sound of sirens in the distance. Every second felt like an eternity. He didn't know how much longer the baby could wait. The little boy's breathing was still shallow, and he seemed weaker than before. Mia, Jared said, trying to keep her focused. The ambulance is almost here. Just a little bit longer. Your brother's going to be okay. I promise. Mia looked up at him, her eyes filled with doubt. But what if they take him away? What if they don't let me be with him? Jared took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. I know it's scary, Mia, but you don't have to worry about that. We're going to make sure they understand that you need to be together. You're his sister, and that means everything. Just then, the sound of sirens grew louder, and Jared's heart skipped a beat. They were finally here. The help Mia and her brother desperately needed was just moments away. Mia, he said softly, it's time. Let's get you both the help you deserve. Mia looked up at him, her eyes filled with both hope and fear. She nodded quietly, still holding her brother close, as the door to the restroom opened and the paramedics rushed in. The race against time was over. Now, they could finally get the help they needed. The moment the paramedics entered the restroom, Jared felt a mix of relief and anxiety. He had been waiting for this moment for what felt like hours, but now that it was here, he could hardly believe it. Maya was still clutching her baby brother tightly, her face pale with worry. Hey there, sweetheart, one of the paramedics, a woman named Sarah, said in a gentle voice. I'm Sarah. We're here to help. Mia didn't move, her eyes fixed on her brother. She didn't trust anyone just yet, and Jared understood. He knelt down beside her and placed a hand on her shoulder. It's okay, Mia. They're here to help your brother, he said softly. Mia's wide eyes turned to him, and for a moment, he could see the uncertainty in her gaze. Will they take him away from me? She whispered. Jared shook his head. No, Mia. I won't let them do that. They just need to make sure he's okay, but you're both going to stay together. You've got my word. The paramedics didn't rush Mia. They allowed her to stay as close as she wanted to her brother, and Sarah slowly and gently reached for the baby, offering a soft, reassuring smile. "Is it okay if I take him for just a minute to check him?" Sarah asked Mia. Mia hesitated, her small hands trembling as she loosened her grip on her brother. The baby still hadn't moved much, but Sarah's calm presence seemed to reassure her. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Mia nodded. Sarah carefully lifted the baby, checking him over with gentle hands. Another paramedic, a man named David, knelt down next to Mia. "Hey there, I'm David. I just want to make sure you're okay too. You've been taking care of your brother all by yourself, haven't you?" Mia nodded silently, her eyes never leaving Sarah and the baby. David looked at her with concern. "You've done an amazing job, Mia," he said kindly. "You're very brave. But now, it's our turn to take care of both of you." Jared saw Mia's shoulders relax just a little, as if she was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, things would be okay. Sarah finished checking over the baby and turned to the others. "He's very weak, but we can stabilize him. He needs fluids and warmth right away. We'll take him to the hospital, and they'll take good care of him." Mia's eyes filled with tears. "But will he be okay?" Sarah gave her a reassuring smile. "We're going to do everything we can to help him, okay? He's in good hands." Jared placed a hand on Mia's back, offering a comforting touch. "You're not alone anymore, Mia. We'll be with you every step of the way." The paramedics carefully wrapped the baby in a warm blanket and placed him on a stretcher. Sarah motioned for Jared and Mia to follow her as they walked toward the ambulance. Mia hesitated, but Jared smiled and took her hand. "It's okay. We'll be right there with you." The cold night air hit Jared's face as they stepped outside, but the warmth of the ambulance seemed to promise hope. He could see the flashing lights of the emergency vehicles as they arrived, their red and blue lights lighting up the dark streets. As they loaded the baby into the ambulance, Jared turned to Mia. "You did the right thing, Mia. You kept your brother safe." Mia nodded, wiping the tears from her eyes. For the first time since Jared had found her, there was a small glimmer of hope in her expression. As the doors to the ambulance closed, Jared knew that this was just the beginning of a long journey. But for the first time in what felt like forever, he could see a light at the end of the tunnel. The ride to the hospital felt like a blur. Jared sat beside Mia in the back of the ambulance, his eyes constantly on the baby. The paramedics worked quickly, checking the baby's vital signs and making sure he stayed warm. Mia, though silent, never took her eyes off her brother. She was still holding his tiny hand, her small fingers trembling slightly, but there was a quiet determination in her face now. "Is he going to be okay?" Mia asked again, her voice soft but full of worry. Jared didn't want to lie to her, but he could see how scared she was. "The doctors will do everything they can, Mia. They're really good at helping kids like your brother. He's in good hands now." Mia nodded slowly, her eyes not leaving her brother for a second. Jared could see the love she had for him in every glance. This little girl had taken on so much responsibility, and she was only a child herself. It was clear that her world had been shattered in ways no one her age should ever have to experience. The ambulance soon arrived at the hospital, and paramedics rushed to open the doors. Mia didn't let go of her brother's hand as they carefully transferred him onto a hospital bed. Jared followed close behind, trying to stay close to her. As they moved through the busy hospital halls, a team of doctors and nurses quickly gathered around. They had been expecting them. One of the doctors, a woman named Dr. Larson, approached Mia with a warm smile. "Hi there, sweetie. I'm Dr. Larson. I'm going to help your brother, okay? He's going to be just fine." Mia didn't say anything, but she looked up at the doctor, her eyes wide with doubt. Jared could see the fear still there. She was still unsure if this was all real, if her brother would really be okay, or if this was just another part of the nightmare. "Mia," Jared said gently, kneeling down beside her. "They're going to help him. You did the right thing by bringing him here. You don't have to be scared." Mia finally looked at him, her eyes filled with unshed tears. I just want him to be okay. I don't want to lose him. Jared's heart ached for her. She wasn't just a little girl. She was a protector. She had cared for her brother through so much, and now she was terrified that all of it could slip away. You won't lose him, Mia. You're his sister. That means you'll always be with him, no matter what. Mia's lip quivered, but she nodded. Jared smiled at her, giving her a little nod of encouragement. The doctors worked quickly, making sure the baby received the care he needed. Maya was allowed to stay close, and Jared stayed by her side, reassuring her whenever she looked anxious. The hours seemed to stretch on, but Jared knew that every moment was a step closer to healing for both Mia and her brother. Eventually, Dr. Larson returned with some good news. Mia, your brother is stable now. He's still weak, but we're confident he'll recover. He just needed a little extra help. Mia let out a soft gasp, her face lighting up with a tiny smile. It wasn't much, but it was enough to show how much that little piece of good news meant to her. Jared's heart swelled with relief. They had made it through the hardest part. Thank you, Mia whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. You're welcome, Mia, Jared said softly. You saved your brother. You're stronger than you know. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Mia and her brother had a long journey ahead of them, but for the first time in a long time, there was hope. And with hope, there was a chance for a new beginning. The days that followed were filled with challenges, but for the first time in a long while, Mia could feel a sense of relief. Her baby brother, still fragile but growing stronger each day, was surrounded by doctors and nurses who made sure he got the care he needed. They were kind to Mia too, making sure she had food, a place to rest, and someone to talk to. Jared visited as often as he could, always bringing her comfort with his reassuring words and kind presence. One afternoon, after a long day of doctors checking on the baby, Mia was sitting in a quiet corner of the hospital, her brother asleep in the crib beside her. Jared walked in, his familiar smile making her feel safe again. How's he doing? Jared asked, sitting down next to her. Mia smiled, her tired eyes brightening. He's doing better. The doctors said he's strong, and he's getting bigger every day. I think he'll be okay now. That's great to hear, Jared said, his voice full of pride. You're a real hero, Mia. You've done something amazing, taking care of him like you did. Mia blushed, looking down at her hands. I just wanted to keep him safe. You did more than that. You saved his life, Jared replied gently. Mia nodded but didn't say anything. She had always known she would do anything to protect her brother, but hearing Jared say it out loud made her feel like she had finally done something important. Something that mattered. Over the next few weeks, Mia and her brother were moved to a small, quiet room in the hospital, where they could get more rest and have time to adjust. The doctors explained that they were working on a plan for the two of them, making sure Maya would be able to stay with her brother once they left the hospital. One day, after a long talk with social workers, Mia was told that she wouldn't have to be alone anymore. There were people who could help her, who would make sure that she and her brother had a safe place to stay. Mia listened quietly, still unsure of what all of this meant. Would she be sent somewhere far away? Would her brother have to be taken from her again? But when the social worker explained that Mia and her brother would be placed with a kind family who would support them both, Maya finally started to feel a weight lift from her shoulders. Do you think we'll be okay? Maya asked Jared one day, as she watched her brother sleep. I know you'll be okay, Jared said softly. You're strong, Mia. You've already been through so much, and now you're going to have the help you deserve. Mia looked up at him, her eyes full of hope for the first time in weeks. Thank you, she whispered. Jared smiled, his heart full of pride. You don't need to thank me, Mia. You did it all on your own, but I'll always be here for you. Days turned into weeks, and slowly Mia began to understand that this was the start of a new chapter for her and her brother. They would face challenges, But with the support of people who cared, they would no longer have to go through it alone. When the time came for them to leave the hospital, Mia walked out of those doors with her brother in her arms, ready to start the life they had both dreamed of. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, Mia felt a sense of peace. She was no longer alone. And with that, she knew that anything was possible.